This is Living Healthy with Jackie Bell, the show with the information on health that you need to know from people you can trust. Brought to you by The Woman in You.
Hi, welcome to Living Healthy. I'm your host, Jackie Bell. Welcome to the second season of our show. Today's show is about 7 food and lifestyle tips to help you thrive in tough times with Sheryl Worthington Turgeon of Your Health Potential. Sheryl, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Jackie. It's great to be here.
Sheryl has a background in psychology, behavioral change, and public health, and she's certified by the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and Columbia University in New York City as a nutrition coach. Today we'll talk about getting back to the basics of whole, fresh foods, reducing food allergies and sugar sensitivity, avoiding GMOs, neurotoxins, and other chemicals to revive and rejuvenate your mind, body, and spirit.
Yes,
so Sheryl,
we will.
Let's talk a little bit about getting back to basics and what that means and how you share that with your clients.
Well, you know, I talk about getting back to basics because really we're talking about going back to eating the way our grandparents ate. And that means that it's foods that are free of pesticides, free of genetically modified organisms. They are fresh, whole foods, really just as nature intended.
I just want to stop you. Can you just tell us what a GMO is, this genetically modified foods, and
Sure.
why would that be dangerous? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's good that we're just all on the same foundation.
A good example, I think, is canola oil, which is primarily grown in Canada. And what Monsanto, the seed company and chemical company, has done is to create a plant which is Roundup ready, which means they can spray the pesticide on this plant and all the weeds or other plants growing around it, and they will all die, but this plant won't. Which means what we're eating, if it can withstand chemical spraying, you have to wonder what is in that. You know, it's basically been modified to such a degree that it can withstand
Right, and
so much.
Not only would you be absorbing the pesticides or the weed killers, but then the GMO is a modified. It's not a natural food.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Sure.
So back to basics, the food and what else?
Well, really, we talk about getting, when I say fresh whole foods, we're talking about getting fresh fruits, vegetables in your diet, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, fresh greens, so that we're eating a balanced diet and we're moving away from the processed foods. Basically, I tell my clients anything that's in a box is basically what you don't want. Mm-hmm. You really want the original whole food itself because that's where you're going to get the nutrients. What we've done over time to enhance shelf life, to make things easier, quicker, that sort of thing, is we have modified our foods so that, for example, a kernel of corn is no longer the kind of corn that our ancestors ate. It's mostly the starch and not the germ. Mm. And we're talking about the same thing with rice. We're talking about the same thing with wheat, where the essential nutrient that our bodies need to thrive has been removed, it's been refined. So we also get into some of the labels, and I won't get into all of that now, but really some of the things you're looking for are, you know, refined, homogenized. Of course, there's always the high fructose corn syrup that you don't want. So we're really, the fewer times manufacturing has had its hands on a food, the healthier it's going to be for you.
Okay, so that makes sense. And that's important not only because there's be more nutrients in the food, but that we're probably eating more of exactly what we know. For instance, there's a lot of sugar or extra salt and things that are harmful to our biochemistry if we consume them on a large scale. And then also the fact that some of the things that we eat are non-food, what I call non-food items, like soft drinks and so forth. So you're actually poisoning your system.
Yeah, you really are. And really, I agree with you. I think, you know, the processed foods really hardly qualify as foods. If you look at a label and you see, you know, the list of chemicals that went into making that food, it's not something that you really want to put in your body.
Yeah. So we're going to talk today about the 7 food and lifestyle tips that you recommend. And because there's 7 of them, I want to make sure that you cover them as thoroughly as you want for us. So can you just start us out with number 1?
Sure. Well, of course, number 1 is what I just spoke about, and that's eating the greens and nuts, seeds, the fresh whole foods. And I would just add that if you do eat animal products, that it really should be free range, free of growth hormones, free of any kind of antibiotics, so that everything you're eating is in its natural state.
Now, a lot of people say that, gee, well, it takes too long to prepare the food, or I don't like to cook, or I don't have time, or do you work with people to help them find, you know, wonderful recipes and sort of get the concepts behind how to make food taste good, easily, whole foods? And
I really do, and it's really not that complicated, and it isn't that time consuming, because what you can do is basically cook once and then modify, so that your food that you may have cooked, say, on Sunday, then you start adding, I always add another fresh ingredient each time I would use that food. But you can change spices, you can add you know, other vegetables. You can really mix it up, and you've got it ready, you know, that second evening in maybe 5 minutes, you know, something like that. So we do go through ways to speed it up. But, you know, there's also, I think, a shift in mindset that goes on where you realize that nourishing your body and nourishing your family really is a priority. And instead of, you know, somehow it's been pushed to the side with our busy lives, and it really brings much more to you and your family than just the food.
Yeah.
You know, sitting at the dinner table and the conversations that you have are really important, I think, in everybody's lives.
Yeah, lifestyle is an investment.
It
that
is.
pays off later on.
Yeah, it really is.
So what's the second thing?
So I think the second thing I would suggest is for people to keep a food journal. And that's really, it's not about counting calories, and it's not about concerns with fat. It's really more to raise your awareness of what you're eating, when you're eating, and really how you're feeling before you eat and after you eat. And all these things give us a clue as to what we metabolize well, what we don't metabolize well, what gives us energy, as well as what our triggers are for foods that we might crave. And when we start to see a pattern, working together, we can start to make changes so that the next time that trigger comes up, you have something handy that you can do that's an alternative.
I remember, I think it was last year, I was advised at a clinic where I work, and they had done some body work on me, and they said, you know, it'd be really great for you if you didn't eat gluten or, you know, wheat products for 3 or 4 months. I said, oh, no problem, I don't hardly eat any. And then when I got home, you know, about 2 weeks went by, and I thought, oh my gosh, I do eat a lot more than I thought I did, you know, and then I just started, you know, finding other things to eat, but I never noticed how much of a certain thing that I was eating until I decided not to eat it for a while, you know.
Yeah.
And I did notice a lot of difference, so I can definitely see the benefit of that.
Yeah, it really is. We're kind of mindless about a lot of the food that we eat. You know?
I think so.
And, you know, it's really not something that you should use to beat yourself up. That's really not the point, you know. But it's a first step.
Yeah.
And beyond that, let me see, we also want to be sure that we're drinking enough water. That's huge as far as hydrating the body as well as detoxifying the body. So getting in the 6 to 8 glasses of water a day is just something that we need to be cognizant about and just keep working at it.
The chiropractor told me she had a new patient that said, yeah, but there's water in coffee.
Which also dehydrates you.
I know. So she had to explain a little bit more to him. So tell us a little bit more about why just drinking pure water would be better than drinking juice, or, you know, I mean, juice is great. And
well, you know, then we get into another one of my tips, which is the sugar content. And I think that, you know, juice it's tough because yes, you will get some nutrients, but with pure juice, what you're getting is a lot of sugar. If you were to eat an orange, for example, you're going to get fiber, and fiber actually kind of neutralizes the fructose, or the sugar, so that it slows it down going through your system. You're not absorbing as much sugar, and you're getting good nutrition. If you have that same amount of juice from that orange just straight without the fiber, it's going to go right to your blood sugar. So it makes a big difference. And I just want to talk a little bit more about sugar because it's so prevalent. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, it's in things that we don't even think about. When you have, let's see, tomato sauce or tomato paste or canned soups, frozen vegetables. There are so many products that have sugar in them, as well as salt and fat, that we want to steer clear of those, because sugar really, I think it's basically the scourge of the 21st century, in that it's going to age us prematurely. It feeds cancer cells. If we have inflammation, say a touch of arthritis, and we have sugar, that arthritis is going to be more painful. And it also qualifies as an addictive substance for a couple of reasons. The first is people will find that what they started out eating gradually increases, so that they need more sugar, more and more and more. And you can see that in the statistics, which are that people now, the average American eats about 170 pounds of sugar a year.
wow.
That is just mind-boggling, I think. The second reason that sugar is addictive is that when you try to stop having sugar, many times you go through withdrawal symptoms like you would with any other substance. You can become achy, fatigued. In extreme cases, I've seen people, you know, that actually had to stay home sick in bed, withdrawing from sugar. Which is why I help people with that. We have a 5-day detox that, you know, through scientific formulation, it's low glycemic and high fiber, and it brings you down off the sugar, so that then it's kind of like a bridge to eating whole foods. And it's pretty easy to do.
What about like complex carbohydrates? A lot of people reach for bread or a donut or bagel in the morning, and they're just, it's, you know, pretty, or even boxed cereal. You might as well, you know, you're still doing the sugar thing.
You really are. And well, there are simple carbohydrates, which is really the sugar, and that's, you know, all of the carbs that we love. The breads, the pasta, the potatoes are included in that. And that is really, it's the same thing. And people will tell me, well, no, I'm not addicted to sugar, but they can't be without their bread. Whereas the complex carbs that we need are the vegetables and the fruits. And those, I tell my clients, you know, they will never put weight on you. Don't worry about eating them. You can have as much as you want. And the funny thing is, when it's not a processed food, you don't hear of people really overeating apples, you know?
Except my kids.
Oh, do they? Well, it's good for them anyway.
I know. I know. I'd rather them overeat that than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think most kids, you know, moms will agree that we really go through the apples.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, and so do you work with the fats then to kind of level out the blood sugar as well?
We do, but it's really, I think there's a bit of a myth about fats that, you know, the fats that we actually need that help to fuel our brain and feed our cells, fats like olive oil, coconut oil, and even some saturated fats we're finding are good for us. And I say that with qualification because if you sat down and ate, you know, fatty meat every night, you are going to have problems. But, you know, it's not really the fat that's been an issue all this time. When something has had the fat taken out, the manufacturers have added sugar to it to enhance the taste, so that we really are getting more and more sugar, and that will turn to fat. So I do work with people on that, and we actually, it's better to have some olive oil on your salad to be able to absorb the nutrients in the salad than it would be to just have, say, you know, vinegar.
So if you go for like a diet dressing, a diet salad dressing, what is the typical ingredients? What are the typical ingredients going to be, and is it really good for you?
Well, first of all, no, it's not. The typical ingredients in a diet dressing are going to be the artificial sugars, you know, the aspartame, which, you know, if I had a choice, I'd eat sugar before I'd eat aspartame. If you look at the label, again, there are so many processed chemicals in that diet dressing that is going to, your body doesn't really know what to do with the chemicals. So that is interfering with your body's metabolism. It's certainly not going to help you with weight loss.
And what about hydrogenated fats? That's something to stay away from as well, isn't it?
Very much so. Hydrogenated fats and the high fructose corn syrup, you know, it's a different way of saying pretty much the same thing. And they really are the kinds of fats that can cause, you know, can clog the arteries and can cause the kinds of heart disease that we see today. So you really want to stay away from all of that. It's much more beneficial to those that are concerned about shelf life than it is to those of us that are concerned about our health.
Another thing too, I think too, is when you start to change up your foods a little bit, it affects your it affects your physiology very much, and it affects your brain and how you think. Because if every morning you're eating cereal and milk, then your brain and your body is expecting that sugar and the simple carbohydrates and that kind of fat in the morning, and that's how your body's going to operate, and so that's going to affect your thinking process, the way that you think. But if you change that up with either an omelet or some soup or something that was completely different, you're going to have different nutrients to your brain. You're going to start thinking differently and operating a little differently.
Yes, you really do.
Yeah.
And you know, the big thing about that also is that you won't have the highs and lows that you have when you start your day with caffeine and sugar, which, you know, really is a roller coaster ride that brings you up and drops you and brings you up and drops you and makes you crave more food, usually the sugar, because your blood sugar has dropped. So if you start your day with an egg, which is really a perfect food, the whole egg, not just the egg white.
Right, but not the shell.
Yes. No, I really don't like the shells, but you know, people think that eggs will give you high cholesterol, and that's really a myth. The cholesterol in an egg is basically part of, you know, the chicken. We produce our own cholesterol. So eating something like that, it's protein, it will keep you going longer in the day, and you are going to, as you said, you're going to find that you're sharper. You don't have the mood swings. So actually, that was one of my other topics or tips that I was going to get into, and that was eating breakfast, which really does literally break the fast and get you going for the day. So we talked a little bit about the kind of breakfast, but you know, different people with different metabolisms.
Yeah, some people aren't hungry in the morning.
I know, but you know, you can, if you are willing to give it a try, you don't have to eat a lot, but you do need to break the fast just to get your energy going.
Right.
And you know, I had a teacher who used to say, you know, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. And that's, I think, is excellent advice. He also said, if you want to look like a sumo wrestler, eat late at night. But we really, you know, with the different kinds of metabolism that people have, some people need to eat really every 2 hours. So for them, I would recommend the breakfast and then a late morning snack. And I'm not talking about donuts or coffee.
Right.
I'm talking about maybe an apple and some almonds. And then having a lunch that could be homemade soup or fresh salad, something like that. And then maybe later in the afternoon, a carrot and some hummus, or you know, something along those lines. And then a dinner, which should also be, really all food should be consumed before 8 o'clock at night. That allows...
Unless you live in New York City.
Yeah, true. Then you're going to have to be out late, right? But it really allows the digestive system to work properly. And for dinner, you know, just an example might be a white fish, a fresh vegetable. You know, right now we have so much fresh squash available, and you can cook that in so many ways that are delicious. And maybe a whole grain like quinoa. Keep in mind that people would really rather change their religion than change what they eat. I think any change is significant, and you need to do it slowly.
So how does a person get started?
Well, I would really start with the food journal and start with that kind of an awareness, because that's going to let you know where your areas are that you might want to change. And then, you know, just start doing something as simple as drinking more water. And what you find as you start making these changes is that they actually build on themselves, because you start to feel better. And you get more vitality, more energy. People start to notice that your skin might look better and your hair might look better. And so you start really feeling more alive. And exercise, I have to add that in because it really is important. But there's no one way to do it. And everybody's different. And I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to, so that you do the kind of exercise, experiment, play, and see what you like, because that's what you're going to keep doing.
Right.
And you can start slow. And I find the people that are most successful are those who really understand self-care. And a very wise woman told me at a point when I was working at a full-time job, going to school, and then we had a big holiday dinner that I was going to prepare, and I was frazzled. And she said, "What do you think your family would rather have? A harried, frazzled mother who can't even carry on a conversation with them, or you at another time that's quality time, that's planned, that's not so frenetic?" That really hit home to me, because as women, we are so accustomed to putting others first. But really, when you put yourself first, what happens is you have more to give, you accomplish your goals, and you feel so much better. So you really can give more to the world. So I guess that's where I'd start.
So Sheryl, we've covered a lot of food and tips for a healthy lifestyle. What about food sensitivity, something that a lot of people face? How do you work with them nutritionally?
Well, food sensitivities, I think, are increasing, and I think part of that, the reason for that, is the genetically modified foods. And what we do, if someone is working hard to lose weight and just can't, or is having some chronic symptoms like IBS, irritable bowel, that's when we might want to look into food sensitivities. And what we do is we have a lab, a reputable lab, that we would send the blood tests into. And it comes back with a report, and we do an analysis of the foods that are causing antibodies to develop. And once we've done that, we work together to make sure that we are planning a diet that tastes good to the client and avoids the foods that are causing the irritation, and at the same time boosts the immune system. So it's not a real prolonged kind of a program, but it gets somebody on the right track. And you can find that with food sensitivities, you may continue to be sensitive to something, or it could just be 3 months, or even if you're only slightly sensitive, you may just have a 4-day rotation with a food. So.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show once again. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you. It's really been a pleasure to be here.
We've been speaking with Sheryl Worthington Turgeon. Her business is called Your Health Potential. You can reach Sheryl at 508-689-4633. Her website is yourhealthpotential.com. My name is Jackie Bell. Thank you for joining us on Living Healthy. Join us next time.